Welcome back, recruits. I'm Chris Nance with the Northern California Ghostbusters, and today we're going to walk you through a few mods for your HasLab Proton pack. We're going to be showing you how to replace the ribbon cable, the cable clamp, and then the ribbon cable clamp, as well as install a Frutotech Keep Alive mod. So let's get started. We're going to start with the absolute basics because we need to open up and get access to the inside of both the pack and the wand. We're just going to go ahead and start taking things apart. Disconnecting the wand, and we're going to set that aside for now. We're going to be disassembling the HasLab Proton pack some. I'm just going to go ahead and basically strip it down as I go. So we're going to go ahead and take all your components pulled out and aside here. The two things we're doing to the Proton pack specifically are going to be, we're replacing this whole ribbon cable and clamp, and then we're actually going to be installing one of these Keep Alive boards by Frutotechnology. Under normal circumstances, the Proton pack turns itself off after about 30 seconds of continuous use. The board here is a pretty simple plug and play thing. We're just going to pop it in. And what that's going to do is every time you turn it on, it's just going to stay on. It's not going to turn itself off after a while. It's pretty handy for the stuff that we do. This fake ribbon clamp out of the way.
You're just using a Phillips head screwdriver to get the clamp out of the way?
Yep, just a simple little Phillips head screw there. So we just use a little Phillips head screwdriver. I'm going to set that hardware off to the side. That lets us pop that off right there. So I want to hold on to that screw because we're going to reuse that screw to mount that, and a little washer we're going to use to mount the actual ribbon clamp right back where it was. A new clamp? Yeah, a real one. So just to get some extra stuff out of the way here.
Always keep track of where you're throwing your Proton pack parts.
Yeah. So now we've got the ribbon cable completely free from this end. That leaves a big clamp section on the inside of the shell here, where it disappears to, that we're going to have to get to and then disassemble and take that out in order to replace this. We're going to have to take this frame off. Phillips head or flat head works for these. If you've seen our previous video, I've shown you how to put this thing on to begin with. So taking it off is even easier. So, another handy little container to make sure that we keep track of all of our hardware here. Because as you can see, not all of these holes are mounting screws, but most of them are. So I am actually going to go ahead and swap screwdrivers here for this one. So these smaller ones, you noticed I swapped to a smaller screwdriver, and the reason for that is because they are much smaller screws with much finer heads on them. And in order to avoid going shallow and then stripping out that screw, I want a little bit smaller, sharper screwdriver head that I can get into the indentations with and actually get leverage with, instead of, damaging the screw head itself. So these deeper ones, you definitely want to be a little bit more careful. I could feel it wanting to try it. Yeah, it keeps wanting to skip on the screw head there. There we go. These tubes that normally live in these spaces, the filler tube and the beam line, are both attached from the back by their own little screws. On one of them, it just popped right out and the part fell out just fine. The other one, I actually had to get it all the way loosened up on the back side and then flip the whole thing around. And I was able to actually get the part off and then push the screw through. Now you find out how I earned the title of experimental equipment technician. So, I think we finally have all of the hardware disconnected from the motherboard. I've taken the battery compartment door off as well. It's also important to note that when you do take this board off, there is a set of wiring for the electricity that runs from this battery compartment box mounted to the board into the pack. So be careful when you're actually pulling things apart because you don't want to actually accidentally yank those leads out. Get these batteries out just to lighten the load. I may end up popping these back in while we have it pulled apart just to test the board before we put it back together again. But otherwise, we should now be able to do like this. Actually go around this board, and I can kind of just feel it loosening as I go, which is fine. I want to make sure nothing is getting knocked out of alignment or bent or anything. I think that was our last piece there. Now the thing I mentioned earlier is that wiring harness to the battery compartment that we want to be careful about as we pull this guy up.
Right there.
Yeah.
That thing, those two cables right there. Yep.
Thankfully, what you'll notice is it's just a 2-line lead, and it goes right to the board with this little JST connection. So all I'm gonna do, this is probably just get it a little bit loosened up where my fingertips can get to it. It's a little finicky. You have to get your fingertips into the little groove to yank it out, but definitely go slow with that because you don't want to do any damage to the board underneath. That's the little power connection. So you can see, this is what connects the actual baseboard into the board, or the battery compartment on the motherboard into the board where it provides power to.
And now we can just kind of move this out of the way because this is completely detached, right?
Correct.
So we can just take this and move this out of your way.
All right, so now we're gonna get started on actually installing the Keep Alive board. This is from Frito Technology on Etsy. That's where Greg got his. Pretty simple little installation. Like I said, it's all plug and play, which is really, really nice. Partially that the Hasbro designers kind of bore in mind we'd be modifying these things. And it's allowed a lot of really cool makers in the fan space to start coming out with their own little simple mechanisms like this. First step that we need to do is we need to unplug that right there. It is the purple 2-pin JST connector marked U7 on the board. So kind of like what I did with the power supply plug. I'm just gonna get in there and wedge my nail in the gap and just very slowly wiggle it up.
There's no clip, right? It just pulls.
It just pulls. Yeah, that pulls right up. It's just a simple little clip. It'll only index back in one direction, so if it's not going in when you go to put it back together, flip it around, you probably have the cable backwards.
Okay.
So that's the other kind of cool thing I'm noticing here too, is we've got all these nice little wire channels for stuff. So like,
if you can add more.
And some of it's unused too. Like we basically have like all of the compartments of the Proton pack can get wired to all of the components of the Proton pack here, which is a really nice design. I don't know about you, but I like to keep these wire bundles nice and separated when I'm in the workspace.
And these are just twisty zip ties?
Just simple itty bitty zip ties that I happen to have around. I'm just gonna use them to keep these things kind of clean and out of our way as we go.
Better than tape is what they were using.
Yeah, especially this like, you can already see from, just taking it apart, like all of this was stuck down like that. The problem with using tape, the adhesive on tape is very heat sensitive. So any real change in temperature is gonna make the adhesive from the tape wanna give. It was something that I used to struggle with once upon a time in my very first Proton pack build. I had used tape to hold down certain things, and it constantly, every time I took my pack apart, I had to re-tape things down. And zip ties and hot glue will get you a lot further, let me tell you. We've got our wire lead isolated. Nothing real complicated to it here. What you want to do is take the lead that you disconnected from the main board on the HasLab pack, just plug it right into this board, bam. And then we're gonna take this lead that comes out of the board, and we're gonna plug it right into
the purple
connection. And remember what I mentioned about it only being able to index one way? Did you see I almost put it in backwards there?
But it goes right in.
Yeah, and voila. So we now have a Keep Alive board installed in the pack.
Now it comes with the switch, but all that the switch does is turn the Keep Alive mod on and off, right?
Correct.
So I think for the sake of this build, we're just gonna leave it on internally all the time. Why would I have it off?
That said, if you wanted to, another thing, I keep mentioning HasLab has done a great job with making this modder friendly. We have a free mechanical switch open here that we could theoretically wire it to. It would definitely be easier just to leave it plugged in and on.
And then that was it. That's the mod.
That's it. That's all we had to do for that.
And then you put everything back and you test it and see if it stays on, and if not, you can open it back up. But like other than that,
that pretty much covers it. I am gonna just nip these down real quick so we have some nice clean wire bundles running. With the motherboard removed from the back side of the HasLab Proton pack, we have access to the very last cable clamp for the ribbon cable. You can see it right here. It is just these 3 screws in this bracket. So, all you need, take your Phillips head screwdriver.
I will be your bin.
My helping hand. One of these days I'm gonna buy some magnetic dishes for this.
Movie magic. The cable actually isn't attached to anything.
Yeah, no, it turns out it goes to nowhere. So one of the nifty things about the design here is these extra cables that were added for the Afterlife designs and in Frozen Empire are basically just attached to these posts that hold the ribbon cable down. You can see now that I've taken the bracket off and let it loose. It just popped in like that, and then the bracket sits on top like that. But with the bracket out of the way, we can do this.
And you're just pushing it through the hole, right?
Well, so I'm just pushing it out of the hole, and what I'm gonna do here is squeeze this end down together to get it nice and thin, so it just comes right out. And voila. There's the ribbon cable removed. So we have this very handsome, custom-made, custom color-coded ribbon cable that Greg ordered from TGB Cablery via Etsy.
About 50 bucks. Yeah, not too bad.
Very cool. This is quite a bit thicker than the one that we just pulled out of there, so that is going to be a little bit of a struggle. Now we also have a custom ribbon cable clip adapter from a seller on Facebook, CNA Designs.
Yeah.
CNA Designs?
CNA Prop Design, yeah.
CNA Prop Design. The way that CNA's designed their custom ribbon cable clamp, you effectively kind of work the clips to loosen this 3D printed bottom plate, and then you can kind of see there are teeth in there and then screw posts. So the idea is we want to clamp this on to the end of the ribbon cable, and it's going to be just toothed right on there. And with it fully seated in, I don't know how well this will show on camera here, you can see we're going to actually...
3 holes.
The 3 holes where the screw posts sit. So we're actually going to run a couple of little flathead Phillips screws right through there. But to do that, I got to clamp everything together so it holds together while I work on it. So...
And then the screws came with the kit. It's important to note too. Yep. It wasn't something we had. Everything came what we needed with the kit itself.
So far, all of the hardware we've shown, except for the tools that I've been using, all of the little screws and hardware that we've shown have been completely from the HasLab, or they came with the kit. It's been kind of a cool thing. All these sellers are pretty good about including all the necessary hardware to put their stuff together. I'm just gonna reattempt what I was trying before with it sitting a lot deeper in the overall clamp. Hopefully, when we take all of this supporting pressure off, it will work. Aha! I see what's going on. I see now. There we go. So now, take my C-clamp off here, and ta-da! So, and then we've got the working clippy things for the HasLab. For those of you who own the HasLab Proton pack, you may have noticed from playing around with it that it's got a few Easter eggy sort of features to it. When you start disconnecting some of the wires and stuff as it's turned on and you know, animating and everything, it'll go into certain, like, you know, different sort of emergency mode stuff. One of the things that does that is when you disconnect the ribbon cable clamp from the pack. And so it has a specific little clip that it uses to attach that clamp, and then it needs to be able to hold down a button underneath that tells the electronics in the pack not to go into that emergency mode.
So that's why you need this clip specifically.
Or
Otherwise
something
you're doing,
like it, yeah.
Or you're dremeling like the standard one, and I didn't want to dremel.
You may have noticed I've been fighting with this cyclotron lid the entire time. I have a solution for that. I don't know why it didn't really occur to me until just now, but we're just gonna take a couple pieces of tape here. So, the way we're gonna go ahead and install this ribbon cable, in my experience, the easiest way, especially with these big chunky, thick wire gauges, because we're gonna have to twist it to get as it goes into the pack here. The easiest way is basically to start like this, and we're gonna go ahead and get that clamp in place. If I can get it to clamp in. Hey! All right. Now the real question is, can it come out? Yeah, it can come out. All right. I am reasonably assured that that is in there.
Okay. Doesn't take much pressure, right? Just that little button has to be pressed, so.
Exactly. Just a little button has to be pressed down, and then if you're doing something like this where we're replacing that really thin ribbon cable that comes stock with something that's quite a bit thicker, most of that struggle was trying to get this ribbon cable to come down flush to where it clamps. Because this is so much thicker, it's kind of just putting some pressure back over here to displace where it seats. So Greg, keep that in mind.
Okay.
So this is a separate purchase that Greg made. It is a ribbon cable clamp, 1 1/4 inch. This is consistent with the larger ones that they used on the GB2 packs and on the Afterlife packs. It's important that you get the bigger size one because it has to hold not just your ribbon cable, but this and that. So it needs to be big enough to be able to hold all of that and then still do that.
And it goes down now thanks to Frozen Empire. We realized that it goes down, right? Used to go up.
Yeah, they changed the position on it. I forgot about that. The thing you will notice on everybody's ribbon cables are these little white nylon zip ties, because that's how you actually get these suckers to kind of get to the shape that you want them to be. And it's a lot easier to get them to collapse on themselves, like so. If I can get this started, there it goes. Y'all remember that screw I removed way back at the beginning of the video? Mm-hmm. There it is.
It's the same screw?
This is the same screw. And all I'm doing right now is hand threading it to get it started. See, I can already tell just looking at the thing, like it needs a washer under it. So, the hardware that came with it, while it's handy and it's the exact right size for this, because we're working on the HasLab pack, in order to make it work, here, let me pull this out of the way and I'll actually show you. Here's the hardware that actually came with the clamp. It's the exact right size, which is handy. It grabs and holds right there even without a washer. I'll grab that washer in a second here. But you can see the post where we would be screwing down to, like I would have to drill out that post completely, basically, to fit this, which is doable. It's possible. It wouldn't be too difficult. If you wanted to do that, I would recommend taking a below 1/4 inch, so probably more like a 732 or even a 1364 inch, basically to strip out enough material for that enlarged screw size, but still leave enough material behind for the threads from that screw to catch on. So instead, what we're going to do is we're actually going to take the original screw that was holding the fake ribbon cable clamp on there, and I'm going to add a little washer that'll give it enough of a diameter here to actually catch and hold on this ribbon cable clamp. And then we're going to pray. These are just industrial plumbing things. Like, you could theoretically find them at your hardware store if you go to the plumbing aisle. What is nice, however, is Hasbro was thoughtful enough to make the posts for this
deep.
Not just deep, but actually like almost the perfect size for the holes on these ribbon cables, clamps. Here we go. We are down to the very final and possibly the, if you're watching this and you've ever built a Proton pack before, you probably know this exact step of ribbon cable installation and how much of a pain in the ass it is.
So everything's been easy up until this point, is what you're trying to say?
Yes, everything's been easy up until this point. And we've got some added engineering challenges going on here. What I'm gonna do here to make our lives a lot easier is I'm just gonna take these 2 tubes off their posts and get them out of the way. Flipping her back around, because I'm probably gonna have to flip this thing around a couple more times here.
Okay.
All right, so we're gonna take these tubes, get them out of the way. This should be fine. And here is the twist. What a twist! So there really is no right way to do this.
I'll try to hold this so it doesn't give so much resistance to the thing.
Yeah, that is helping quite a bit, actually. Yeah. Come on. Just using a zip tie to get it as tight as I can on the end there. Voila, it's in.
Yeah, it doesn't seem too bad.
Well, that wasn't such a chore now, was it? So you could use a pair of scissors for this. It would be much slower going than what I'm doing. I actually have a pair of shears here. They're wire shears, so they're not very robust. But just a little bit of... Ta-da! The zip tie is coming right back off again. And now that we have it through the hole where we want it, and then you can see with the zip tie off, I can just flatten it into 3 layers like that. So, I think the easiest thing to do here...
Yeah, drill them and put them all the way down, right?
Basically, yeah. Which, I actually need a bigger hole than that. That's a 1564 bit. To be honest, I am just kind of eyeballing this. That small hole I just cut real quick to give myself a pilot for this guy. Now, I should be able to do something kind of like this. Ah, there it goes. Ta-da! It didn't get that last wire end quite where I wanted it to be. That's okay. I think we can still get it in the bracket there.
Oh yeah, that's not that much resistance. Oh, it's a little, actually it's a lot of resistance. Okay, but it'll bend. It's wire, right?
Once I get the bracket on, once I get the other tubes through and on top and then the bracket on, like, I think that'll do enough to support it. So now I'm just going back. You can see I don't have a lot of room to work with here, but all I'm doing is I'm trying to run these fake tubes back through again. Oops, sorry, Greg.
No, I gotcha. There you go.
So now, with all of that back through and inside of the pack, we can actually go back and do like this might get a little wedged in there, but it should work. It might even get, you know what? You know what? You know what? We're going to dedicate all of the bracket's strength to just that ribbon cable, so it should be okay. So normally, as you may recall, when we first took this thing apart, it ran kind of like this. Oh, you know what? That'll work. And then this guy posted right there. Now, obviously, there's a lot of extra space being taken up by this much thicker new ribbon cable, so we're not going to be able to get all that through. But what we can do, see if I can, is just wedge it right out of the way in some negative space. And you know what? We're just going to leave it loose right now, because I think if I just go like that and then get the bracket in place, it should be fine. I think it's tight enough that it's even kind of pushing one of the posts slightly out of alignment here. Oh, or actually, I just have the bracket backwards. Gonna get this started on the easy side, I think. The nice thing with it bracketing in like this is I can basically kind of leave things a little loose and get all three screws started, and then use the threading on the screws to help kind of get everything nicely into place with the bracket. There she is. And just to show off how she looks from the front end here now. We can futz with this later, but all right. And that's how you replace your ribbon cable. It was a little bit of a struggle, but we got there in the end. Now that that's been done to the pack side of things, we are going to go ahead and do our final tests on the Keep Alive mod to make sure it's working correctly. Here we are again with the motherboard back. We're just going to go ahead and plug the battery compartment back in. So it's going to be the yellow 2-pin JST connection, and it's marked BAT1, okay. Battery 1. Okay. All right, so before we get too wild reassembling this thing, actually, if I can get this. All right. So we just, before we finished putting the Proton pack back together, you can see from this lovely gap here, I just went ahead and plugged the batteries back in, and we turned it on to make sure that the Keep Alive board is working and doing its job. And as you can see, we're already at 1.5 minutes right now. We're gonna go ahead and give it till just over 2 minutes just to be completely certain. But I feel pretty confident at this point in saying that Frutotech's Keep Alive board, working great.
We did it.
So, as you can see, all I have to do is gently press down. Hold on, something's interrupting on that other side. The thing that makes this extremely tricky is we actually have indexed posts. So if you come around to this side, Greg, you can see there's ridges on the motherboard post, and there's a corresponding slot in the Proton pack itself. So to get this all lined up going in, we need to make sure that this post is in alignment first. Stick those there. What is going on? What am I indexing? There's something else that needs to index, I think. Hold on. Let me flip this around where I can see.
Nice and slow, but it gets in and then it goes
There's
flush.
a post on this side as well that isn't indexed, but it needs to get past a lip there, it looks like. And then we should. Hey, all right. That's back on. Just the battery cover, yeah. And since this is going to be the easy part.
I feel like there's so many screws that you don't need back here.
There are. There we go. And that is how you install a custom ribbon cable and clamp and the Fruitotech Keep Alive mod.